Yahoo DFS, Yahoo Sports, Dave Lochran, Jake Hari. 10 games today, but it's a little bit different. We got a split slate right down the middle, Jake, 5-5. So not that horrible. You got five in the day slate from 1 p.m. to till 3 p.m. And we'll talk about the differences between sites here on Yahoo, on DraftKings, on FanDuel, and then five on the night slate. So two decent little slates for a Thursday.
Yeah, not too bad at all. I don't mind the 5+ game slates. It makes it easier. There's concentrated ownership, so there's a lot of leverage. So getting a couple of them, I'm not too mad about that. The only thing we should mention is the main slate locks a half hour early today. So DK and FanDuel both included that game in there, which is surprising. Usually they cut that one off and make it a 4 game slate and do like some showdown or single game, but I'm glad they included the earlier one.
Yeah, generally I'm not big on that, but this makes perfect sense because the second game on the night slate doesn't start until
Mhm.
7:45. So I think if it were a 7:05 start, they probably would have just axed the 6 p.m. game. But like, okay, for example, when FanDuel was including the 6:30 games and there were 13 other games on the slate, that seemed wildly unnecessary. But to throw in a fifth game to make it 5 games to a little bit more robust, I don't have an issue with that at all. I actually kind of appreciate that because this isn't something they would have done before.
Right. Yeah, I'm in on that as well. So glad they did it. We will have each show is going to start a half hour early just to deal with this new start time. So if anybody's looking for stuff later to do, deeper dive will be at what is that?
4:30.
4:30 Eastern, and then live before lock with myself and Chris will be at 5:30 Eastern.
Yep, and we probably won't need an hour each, but we're gonna do it anyway
Yeah.
because 5 games for baseball shouldn't take that long. Uh, Yahoo, by the way, sponsor of the strategy show, their main slate is 4 games, so they're starting it at 7:45. Now they have a 5 game slate that starts at 6 o'clock, but their bigger contest, the MLB 10K guaranteed, 2K to first. That's the one that's at the top of the lobby every day. That is starting at 7:45. So if you're someone that is not getting home from work until mid right around 6:30 or something, and you don't and you want to be able to have time to adjust your lineups, well, Yahoo will give you that extra hour to do that, whereas DraftKings and FanDuel aren't going to give you that luxury today. So the 4 game slate on Yahoo, 5 on FanDuel, and 5 on DraftKings. But before we jump into that, let's tackle this early slate, Jake. We've got 5 games starting at 1:10 Eastern, and another interesting thing is they're including the 3 p.m. games, which they haven't done on a bunch of slates. Uh, we'll start with the White Sox in Cleveland. Carlos Carrasco and Manny Benuelos. Benuelos has actually looked decent in some spots and then got hammered last time out against Boston. Didn't get out of the third inning, gave up 9 runs, 3 homers. I think you're going to see hiccups like that for somebody like him. And then Carrasco has kind of been all over the map this season. We know that he's someone that throughout his career has oddly been better away from home, but that hasn't been the case this year. And I'd be perfectly fine seeing those splits finally normalize and not be so strange. What are you thinking in pitching here?
Yeah, so it looks like Carrasco, as you can imagine, pretty heavy chalk on this early slate on DraftKings and FanDuel, and then on Yahoo. I'm sure on all slates he's also going to be very, very popular, and for good reason. I mean, he's got probably the best stuff on this slate. So I don't have an issue going to Carrasco. I noticed on Yahoo he's actually really cheap compared to where some of these aces have been priced up. He's only $44 on Yahoo, and like a few days ago we saw 4 or 5 pitchers priced up over $55. And maybe he's
Yeah.
not at like the Blake Snell level or like Chris Sale and all those guys, but $44 seems super cheap for Carrasco on Yahoo. So he's tough for me to avoid there, especially if you're playing the all day slate. 10-2 on DK. I have no problem paying that against the White Sox. So I'm probably going to be with the chalk. I will try to get around the field. I don't really think Carrasco is going to decide much for me on the early slate here.
Yeah. So when you look at somebody like Carrasco, you know that he's got the easy double digit strikeout upside. I mean, there's no question that we have that at our disposal. Will it happen? I don't know. But what did you say his ownership's coming in at right now?
I thought it was
Go ahead.
60 plus. Yeah, okay, it was 63% on DK, and then on
Yeah.
FanDuel he was at 43.
Yeah, that's a lot. Now, obviously it's not just because he's a good pitcher. We've also got a matchup against the White Sox, so it's kind of the best of both worlds there. I think the White Sox on the season, I mean, that this team is loaded with strikeouts against righties on the year. The White Sox, we're starting to get a decent enough sample too. Seventh in K rate, 25.9%. They have some power scattered throughout that lineup, but there's no question that Carrasco's could give you 10, 12 strikeouts here. I wouldn't bat an eye if he did, but God, 60+% is wild.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. And I guess looking at some of these prices, you're either going to kind of have to go with Carrasco or Colorado bats or Cubs bats who are also priced up. So I like that they price up those bats. At least it'll make people make decisions. Like you can't just jam in the best pitcher and the teams with the highest implied totals type of thing. So yeah, I think I'm probably going to be on quite a bit of Carrasco here. It's just tough to avoid. Like, who else are you going to in lieu of Carrasco? Like Darvish, I guess, is your only other option,
but he's going to be super
Yeah.
chalk as well. I mean,
and
right?
Darvish almost 50% on the first run of ownership. So for me, they're close enough where I'll just pay the extra $700 if I can and get up to Carrasco.
It feels like differentiating at hitter seems to make more sense because, we'll get through the rest of the pitching options, but it's not pretty. I mean, Chris Bassett's almost 9K on DraftKings.
Yeah.
Benuelos is above 8K, and then Trevor Richards, Tanner Roark. There is a guy down there that I think you can pivot away from one of these guys with, and we'll talk about him in this very next game. But then there's Kyle Freeland, Ryan Carpenter, Derek Holland after that game was postponed yesterday. No, it's a pretty ugly sight. What about the other side here? As I mentioned, Benuelos for the White Sox. He's not exactly cheap.
Yeah, that's the thing with him is that he's just not cheap enough for me to want to.
FanDuel he is, but you're not playing him on FanDuel.
Yeah, he's cheap on Yahoo. He's actually $28, I believe. Yeah, 28 on Yahoo. So if you are going to him, I would suggest. I mean, you like Awesemo and all the top players suggest playing on multiple sites and like shopping basically on these guys. So I would play if you're playing on Yahoo. Maybe consider Manny Benuelos over there. On DK, I just don't really think I'm going to get to him all that often because like he's got some swing and miss upside, but he's not really going deep enough into these games. And then there's not really a lot of strikeouts in this Cleveland lineup. Like you look at some of these K rates versus lefties, Lindor, Kipnis, Ramirez, Santana, those first four, all 21% or under, and Lindor, Ramirez, and Santana are 13% and under. So they're just, I don't see a lot of strikeouts here for Benuelos, so I'm probably not getting to him.
Yeah, and then there's a few guys in this lineup that are like league average. Carlos Gonzalez. Actually, no, I'm sorry, against lefties. I don't know what Cargo is against lefties.
Against lefties, since the start of last season, he's at 20%.
Right, so around league average. Yeah, where are your highest K rates coming from? I think you'll have like 3 of them above 25, maybe 2 above 25% on this active roster.
Yeah, Roberto Perez strikes out a ton, and then Bowers if he's in.
Right.
Plawecki, off the top of my head, I don't think he strikes out a lot. So depending on the catcher,
I think Luplow does. Huh?
Luplow does 26% since the start of last season versus lefties.
Yeah. Right. We just don't know exactly who's going to be in the lineup, but they have 5 or 6 guys that don't strike out very much at all. Do you like hitters against against Manny Banuelos at Progressive Field. Right now, the total for this game, uh, pretty neutral park. Uh, you have a sorry, I had to pull it up here. Nine total, a 3.5 run total for Cleveland, and then for the White Sox, and then for Cleveland 5.6. That is the highest or second highest on this slate. Believe it or not, we have 3 teams with a 5.6 or higher total on a 5-game slate. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, you won't have a shortage of options for hitting, even though it is a short slate. So
does 5.6 not seem remarkably high for Cleveland in a neutral park? Does that not seem really high, or am I missing something?
It is. It is high. But if you look at the weather for this game, 75 degrees, wind blowing out at 17 miles an hour.
I hear you. It's just it's still odd that it would be affected that much at that park. I don't remember see. It's strange. I don't know. Cleveland has not been a great offense. I mean, look, I'm not saying I don't buy it, but they literally have the same total as the Rockies against Derek Holland. And I know it's freezing in Colorado, but it's still pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is pretty high. It was much higher than I expected when I started looking at this last night. And kind of same thing for the Cubs, but that's a Wrigley win game. I guess that would fall into that category. So kind of understand that. It just the wind has plays so much into hitting and pitching in that park. So you understand that, but yeah, 5.6 is pretty high. And the top 4 hitters for Cleveland are getting ownership. Well, the top 3, actually, Santana at 6% really sticks out to me if he's batting cleanup there. But yeah, I have no problem with any of these Cleveland hitters. I'm definitely going to have a bunch of Cleveland stacks here.
And before we move on, do you see any leverage in targeting White Sox bats just because of how popular Carrasco is, or are you going to get different elsewhere?
If Moncada's going to be below 5%, I'm definitely in on that. Same thing with Yonder Alonso. Those would be the 2 guys I would be looking at. And you mentioned that Carrasco has pretty drastic home road splits. Is that right?
Yeah, not this year, but he has for years, going on years. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. I remember just off the top of my head, when he does get knocked around, it is with lefty power, it seems like.
Yeah.
So it would be those 2 lefties. I think 35% hard hit rate versus lefties for Carrasco over the last year. So, yeah, I mean, he's a really good pitcher, but you should be looking at the other side as well. If you're playing multiple lineups, I'm certainly going to be.
Yeah, I like that. It's crazy how DraftKings specifically has priced these White Sox bats so high, though. I mean,
Jeez.
Anderson's 52 still, Moncada's 5K, Abreu's 5,300, Garcia, I don't even know if he's going to play, but he's 49. I mean, they're priced through the roof. Even with the dynamic pricing that they do, again, bringing them down against better pitchers, they haven't really budged.
I didn't even notice that. I just assumed they were cheap. I mean, Alonso's cheap.
Crazy, right?
Delmonico's cheap, but I mean, depending on what you think of him, like Tim Anderson in the 7-hole, 5,200.
Dude, yeah. And how about this? Moncada went up in price since his last game.
It's like DK thought someone else was pitching this game.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe Jeffrey Rodriguez. I don't know. Very strange. Anyway, let's talk about the Tigers and Angels. Skaggs got knocked around yesterday. Now you've got Luke Bard probable to open this game, and then Felix Pena. This was the one guy that I was actually referring to as someone that I would be willing to take a look at. I like Pena. I think he's made some quality adjustments this year. If you look at his stuff, one of the big things is, at least from what I've seen, from what I've been watching and looking at, as far as his pitch mix goes, he has stopped throwing the 2-seamer as much. Last year, threw it 50% of the time. This year, only 27%. Increased slider usage, increased 4-seamer usage, and ticked up on the changeup as well. So you're getting more opportunity for missed bats. The slider and changeup are both are getting whiffs at 26 and 23% respectively. Really, really good numbers there. And I think that's something that should help him going forward if he's not going to pitch a ton of innings. But obviously, I worry about how deep he can go into this game. The reason I'm talking about Pena, though, is because we don't have that much pitching outside of Carrasco. And, obviously, if you want to talk about Darvish, that's fine, too, but not the greatest park conditions at Wrigley. So I think we need to talk about Pena as potentially just a stopgap as an SP2. Ryan Carpenter pitching for Detroit, by the way. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Pena is the guy I'm more interested in this game, just because. So yeah, he's not going super deep in his first couple starts, or these first couple times they've experimented with the long reliever. He went 4 1/3 and 5 innings against the Yankees and Toronto, but in those games, an 18% and a 23.1% swinging strike rate. So he hasn't stopped missing bats. I mean, yeah, the Tigers lineup isn't great, but if you get to avoid the top 4 for the Tigers even one extra time, that's huge for a guy like Pena, where he can just feast on guys like Ronnie Rodriguez, Mercer, Grenier, Jacoby Jones. Those guys all strike out a good amount. I'm not exactly sure about Harold Castro, but I'm assuming he's not a great hitter either. Yeah, I like Pena here quite a bit. It's not a perfect price, 7,300, but wind blowing in here. The total is not out yet. I'm expecting it to be pretty low. And yeah, I do like Pena. I guess he's by default kind of one of my favorite SP2 options on the early slate.
Yeah, you don't really have many options, many alternatives. But hey, the Tigers have a 26.5% K rate against righties. That's the fourth highest in baseball this season. They are not exactly a team that boasts a ton of power. I mean, they're not super scary, They have a bottom 25th WRC plus against righties. So I think it is a decent spot for Pena. I mean, if you don't think it is, that you're going to have to answer where you want to go instead, which I think, becomes kind of difficult. I can't imagine. I won't speak for you, but I can't imagine you're going for Ryan Carpenter.
No, I don't like Carpenter here. I mean, the Angels aren't great, but they also don't really strike out much. And yeah, he's only 6K, so I guess you can basically always make a case. But I can't click on Carpenter for whatever reason. I'm assuming he's not going very deep into games. Do you have that in front of you?
No, but I mean, I'm assuming he was making starts at AAA. So
let's see.
Let's see. I mean, he's been starting, so if he's coming off a start, if you want to go to major or minor league page, we can pull it up. But I'm assuming he's been making regular starts at the minor league level.
Okay, for some reason I had him not going 3-4 innings at a time, being more of a long reliever. But if he is making a decent amount of starts, then I guess he's fine. But he's still not a pitcher that really gets me going, especially in this matchup with Ohtani back for the Angels. Just another bat in there that doesn't strike out a ton and is also really good. So I just don't see a bunch of strikeouts here for Carpenter. I'd rather just pay up a little bit more for Pena if I can, or Richards, I guess.
Yeah, I have no interest in him. I mean, this guy was striking out 7% of batters at the AAA level through 6 starts this year. Jeez. And if you want to even look at his swinging strike rate, it was sub 10%. That usually doesn't translate well to the major league level. He was throwing plenty of pitches. So if you look at his game log, he last pitched on May 3rd. He threw 91 pitches, 6 innings. Okay. He's been efficient. 7 innings, 4 hits, 91 pitches, but only 5 Ks, 4 Ks in 6 innings, 4 Ks in 5, 6 and 6, 4 and 5. Pretty modest strikeout stuff. And the Angels have the lowest K rate against lefties of any team this season. So while they're not very good, like you said, I mean, I totally agree. Actually, I think their WRC plus against Southpaws is probably bottom 5. Yeah, bottom 6. There's not a ton of upside here either.
Yeah.
for a guy like Carpenter, unless he's going complete game shutout, and I'm be hard pressed to expect that to be the case in his first start.
Yeah, I think I'd be more okay taking one of the Coors pitchers, honestly. Uh,
Oh,
really,
me too.
just guys that are we know are good pitchers. We have a sample size. At least they can be good pitchers at times. I think Freeland's a much better real life pitcher than DFS pitcher, and maybe the same thing for Holland. But those guys are in the same price range. I'd probably rather go there for ownership reasons alone. I would expect if Carpenter's going to be a favorite here, he's probably going to have some ownership just because people play favorites. Actually, not he is not owned right now, but I wonder if that comes up.
What about hitters?
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't really want to target a bunch against these bullpen games, especially with Detroit. If they're going to get a guy who's going to go all out for an inning against them, that eliminates a top four at bat, or the top four and at bat each for them.
And then Pena's
Yeah,
pretty decent.
especially against righties. He's really, really good against righties.
Yeah.
So
Oh, dude. Yeah, he's very good with very limited power allowed to righties as well.
yeah, if there were like a couple power lefties here, I'd be more likely to go to Detroit. But I think they're going to kind of get left off for me.
Me too. Yeah, I feel fine about that. We could talk though. Chicago and Miami. You had mentioned a moment ago that the wind is blowing out. Wind games at Wrigley. Look, they have been different ever since they did the renovations there, and it's really it's hard to say, but they've been different. There's no question. Like winds still blowing out to right center field at 13 miles per hour, 65-degree temperatures, so perfectly fine hitting weather here. 70% humidity. Now you've got you Darvish on the mound, and then you have Trevor Richards on the mound. Uh, Richards is a pretty like I would if you were to ask me what do you think of Richards, I'd say he's pretty much a league average pitcher that has a really good changeup and not much else. And then with Darvish, I'm not really sure what to say. He's getting a ton of ground balls this year, and he's missing some bats. I think his swinging strike rate, last I looked, was around it's 13%, which is actually the highest of his career.
Yeah.
But his walk rate is also, the highest it's ever been by a wide margin. So there's plenty of good and also plenty of bad with Darvish, who's walked 3 or more batters in all but one start, 4 or more batters in all but 2 starts this season. That's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. Yeah, I was looking at the swinging strike rate and stuff, and I was wondering if he was going to be super chalky, and it looks like he's going to be. I feel more comfortable with Carrasco even at a little bit of an increase in ownership. It's just a personal preference, I guess. The Marlins just saw him a couple weeks ago, so depending on how much you weigh that, yeah, I mean, there should be some strikeouts here for Darvish, but a higher total than Carrasco against him, possibly a Wrigley win game. And then I would like to target some hitters against him if I could. It's probably going to be Granderson and I guess Neil Walker. I mean, I'll play Brian Anderson. I think he's a pretty decent hitter, even righty-righty. I don't think you need to full-on stack against Darvish here, but I'm definitely looking more on the hitter's side, I think, for the Marlins than like getting to the field on Darvish.
I'm with you there. Although I will say, I don't know if hitting on the moon could help the Marlins right now.
Yeah, it's they're just really, really bad. Like the top of the order isn't terrible. I mean, those guys can all be useful on various major league rosters, but like Rojas, Galloway, Alfaro strikes out a bunch. I don't know. It's just not a major league roster at this point.
Dude, no, it's not. It's not even close to a major league roster.
Like, what do the Marlins have that's good on their team besides maybe Richards, Caleb Smith, and Alcantara, if you like him? I mean, their pitching's okay, but like, there's not one of these guys where like you'd be surprised if they were on the waiver wire come mid-season.
No, of course. And several years ago, they had Giancarlo Stanton, They had Marcelo Zuna. They had Derek Dietrich. They had D. Gordon. They had JT Realmuto. They had Jose Fernandez. That's by no fault of their own,
Yeah.
losing him. But that's a stacked lineup right there. A stacked lineup. And Christian Yelich.
Yeah.
Dude,
MVP.
that's crazy.
Yep.
You had Yelich. All right, so let's lead off with D. Gordon. We can throw Yelich in the 2 hole. We can have you could throw Realmuto in the 3, have Stanton clean up, Ozuna in the 5, Dietrich in the 6. That is a nasty top 6 of a lineup.
Insane.
And they've got none of them.
And Brinson, whether it's the pressure or what, he just can't seem to hit at the major league level right now.
Been garbage.
I mean, yeah,
he's just been unbelievably bad.
Yeah.
So, look, usually I avoid pitchers when the conditions are like this at Wrigley, but I'd be hard pressed to say that Darvish isn't playable against the Miami team that's just this bad. I mean, you look at how every other pitcher has fared for Chicago this series. Lester, 6 innings, 0 earned runs, 6 strikeouts. Hendricks yesterday, this is pretty much exactly what I was expecting, except more strikeouts. 7, 8 innings, no runs. He allowed 1 run. It wasn't earned. Lester allowed 2, they weren't earned. But Hendricks went 8 innings with no earned and 7 Ks. And then I think it was Hamels that was the only one that wasn't great. 6 innings, 3 runs, 7 Ks. But the question is Yu Darvish worth almost 10K at this rate? Like, is he worth paying a premium for when he hasn't flashed? Like, he's shown us 2 good games, and he got the win in both of them. Yep. Walked 4 in both of. I don't know if I want to pay that much for him. I'd almost rather just go Carrasco and Felix Pena.
Yeah, I think I agree. So I'm gonna fall on the underweight side of Darvish. Just like looking at his game logs, and this isn't the best way to research, but he's got a 23 on DK and a 27. And like those are good scores for this price, but like you're telling me Carrasco doesn't have 30, 35 point upside here. Like I don't think Darvish has that kind of upside, even in a good strikeout matchup. If he gets you 23 again, I think I'm okay going underweight on him there.
What are your thoughts on the Cubs bats here against Trevor Richards?
The righties, oddly enough, I think are the guys that I'm looking at, like Baez and Bryant. The issue with them is they're priced up a ton as well. But a huge total for the Cubs here, 6. That's the highest on the slate, I think.
Yeah, it was low. I just adjusted a minute ago. It's up to 6 now. Yeah, that's so crazy.
I guess Schwarber is also super cheap at 3,800. So you could get to a Cubs stack. It's just going to be tough to get Bryant, Rizzo, and Baez while also trying to get overweight on Carrasco. So my Cubs stacks are probably going to look a little funky. They might come up in 3-mans and 4-mans more than 5-man stacks. But yeah, I'm definitely playing some Cubs bats here. I think it's tough to avoid them.
It's very tough to avoid them. Trevor Richards is fine. And I mean, hey, if you want to dig a little bit deeper into it, obviously it's early in the day. I know Adam's writing the deep dive. I will have the deeper dive. Jake, you'll be on the live before lock. But if you want to dig a little deeper and look into the best changeup hitters for the Cubs, that might not hurt either, just because Richards is one of those guys that has a very, very good changeup. And it doesn't hurt when you dig into those numbers a little bit further. By the way, he's striking lefties out at 12.9% this year. He has a negative 5.7% K-minus BB rate and a 7 xFIP. Granted, that's just this season. But Trevor Richards, despite not allowing a high weighted on base average to lefties, has really not been able to miss bats there, is issuing a lot of free passes and gives up a good amount of fly balls. So that probably won't do him a ton of favors at Wrigley today if the wind is going to be blowing out as we expect it to. 48% fly ball rate against lefties is not going to help him at Wrigley.
Just unrelated, but related to the slate, people are saying that Cahill is possibly starting for LA. That FanDuel has Cahill as a starter. Are you
Yeah,
seeing that
I
anywhere?
saw that, but the I read that it said Pena will be behind
Okay.
uh behind Luke Bard. So
So just FanDuel being incompetent. Got it. Play
I
on
mean,
Yahoo.
or somebody reported the Pena news wrong, but
Let's see.
no, okay. CBS Sports has it too. Felix Pena working as primary pitcher Thursday. Angels Felix Pena slated. Felix Pena.
I don't see
Yeah,
anything on Twitter about Cahill. So
yeah. I'm pretty sure it's Pena here. And they've already done this with him twice, so
yep,
it's not surprising to see this.
yep.
All right. Um, Colorado, San Francisco. Jake, right now you have a 5.3 run total for Colorado. Came down. I guess everything just got adjusted. But 5.3 for them and then 4.3 for San Francisco. Yesterday they were at 4.4 against John Gray, but no John Gray on this one. And so they're not running a doubleheader today. They just have so they're not doing the makeup game. Uh, I wonder why they pushed John Gray out of it.
Yeah, I don't know why that would be. Uh, like, why would it should just be the same guys that were going to go last night, right?
Yeah, I mean Holland was. Do they trust Freeland more than John Gray? I don't know,
Maybe
but
maybe Gray doesn't prefer to pitch in day games or something stupid like that. I don't know.
or freezing cold temperatures.
Yeah,
I have no idea. But we're looking at 37 degrees at first pitch, Jake. I mean, it is going to be cold. The highest it's going to get throughout this game is 39, 40 degrees. My God.
yikes, that is pretty cold anywhere. So I know the Colorado, the Denver weather can be very volatile. So maybe it warms up during the game. I have no clue what it's going to be, but it's not going to be warm regardless. It's going to be tough to hit and pitch in. I like what you guys said yesterday on the deeper dive, you and Adam, when you're talking about like, yeah, it's not good for hitting, but it's also not good for pitching either. Like it's just
Right.
not comfortable for some of these guys. So you never know
Right.
how people are going to react to that. Probably really hard to stay loose as well. Um, but yeah, I like that you guys brought that up. So like just because it's cold weather doesn't mean the pitcher is automatically going to go out there and feel good and you know just roll through the lineup 3 times. So just something to note. I do like both of these pitchers though. Like uh, there's just where else are you going to go on the slate besides Pena? There's no one else that I'm really
Right.
crazy about. Richards 8K, almost a 6 total against him. I'd rather play Holland for 5,800 just because I know he can get swings and misses. You're worried about Arenado and Story, of course, but it's also pretty decent leverage if the Rockies bats are going to be chalky here. So I like both guys. I'll be targeting pitching more than hitting here. I rarely go out of my way to target against Freeland, and like I would bet Buster Posey is going to be chalky just because he's going up against the lefty in Coors, but it seems like that never works out. So I'm not a Buster Posey guy, and
Oh, dude, I'm
yeah,
100%.
he's
I'm with you
28%,
100%.
28%. So
Yeah, I have never been a Buster Posey has for the last several years been one of the most overrated fantasy plays, especially when people are willing to pay for him in decent spots but not great spots. Like, let's be honest, Kyle Freeland's not a bad pitcher. I mean, you just said it yourself. Kyle Freeland is not bad. But yeah, pitching at Coors isn't going to do him a ton of favors. He's definitely, I think you mentioned this earlier, a better real life pitcher than a fantasy pitcher. All of that is understood, but he's also somebody that generally, and I know this season, I think you got to see things normalize a bit, but not a ton of home runs, not a lot of fly balls. Last year he threw what, 201 innings, and he held lefties to a 234 WOBA, well below average. Righties to a 308 WOBA, that's right around average. And then home runs per 9, 0.4 to lefties, 0.8 to righties.
good.
Yeah, he did a very good job of limiting power. gave up 34% fly balls to both lefties and righties, and basically no hard contact. So obviously not saying he can't get hit, but it's not an ideal spot. And the 4.3 run total, I think, tells you a lot more. Another thing I noticed, the air density, which is usually like in the low 40s at cores, low to mid 40s, is at 54. It's the same as the Diamondbacks park today. And I mean, I know as altitude increases, air density drops, but I don't know. Maybe I guess the cold. I don't know. I'm not a meteorologist, but I do look at this stuff, and I know that lower air density means better hitting weather, and that's as far as I go. But it's higher than it normally is at cores, and the temperatures are much colder than they generally are. Dude, you're 5 degrees above freezing.
Yeah, like there could realistically be snow here.
I wonder if they play I wonder if they play this with how cold it is.
I would think they're gonna play it. They're gonna try to sneak it in here.
Yeah,
unless
especially
it's like a
since they didn't
snowstorm.
play.
But
Right, and they didn't play yesterday either, so it's going to be hard to postpone 2 games in a row.
yeah, they're gonna play it, or at least they're gonna try. I would think so.
Yeah, you would think they have to.
Yeah.
What do you like we said, it's still cold weather. Or it's cold weather, but it's still Arenado and Story against lefties, which is really hard to ignore on a short slate.
Yep, those would be the guys. They're just priced through the roof.
It's crazy, yeah.
5,800 for Arenado on DK, Story at 5,600, and like even guys like Tapia and Dahl, lefty, McMahon at 4,500. I think a bunch of these guys are overpriced, but I'd rather pay for the overpriced good couple hitters versus lefties, or great couple hitters against lefties, and just kind of fill my lineup in with the lower owned, lower price stack.
Right. I mean, dude, Raimel Tapia might be the worst play on the slate at that price.
Yeah, that's terrible. 5K lefty in 37 degrees.
Holland gives up no power to lefties. He's 5K. That is just downright outrageous that he could be priced that high. It's and you know it sucks. It's like Desmond yesterday was 4K. Now he's at the 4,400. A lot of these guys on DraftKings have seen their prices come way up. Ionetta's price came up 300. I don't know if he's going to be in the lineup. So, yeah, they didn't play, and they have the exact same matchup, yet their prices are going to increase. All right, Jake, let's close out the early slate. Oakland and Cincinnati. Chris Bassett, Tanner Roark. Right now, you've got a 3.9 run total for Cincinnati, and for Oakland, 4.7 against Tanner Roark. That's interesting. What are your thoughts on a guy like Chris Bassett, who has actually pitched really well in 3 starts this season?
Yeah, I like Bassett more than I like Roark in this game. I'm just a noted Roark hater. I love targeting power against him, really either side, but especially lefties. So I think Bassett's the guy I'm more looking at. The Reds versus righties this year, I just had it pulled up. I'll get right back to it. I know they're one of the higher K rates and one of the lowest WRC plus. Oh, they're 11th in K rate versus righties, but their WRC plus is at 71. One of the worst on base percentages. I mean, they just are very good to attack right now. They just cannot hit really either side, but especially righties. So I don't mind Bassett. He's, like you mentioned, he's pitched well, and he's missing bats. So he's not a guy that I was targeting the first couple starts, so I'm kind of behind on him. But I will be targeting him here. I mean, 7, 9, and 6 strikeouts in his first 3. He's given up a few home runs, but a 12.7% swinging strike rate and above average chase rate. So that's my guy.
Yeah, I don't think it's crazy at all. I mean, the truth is, what alternatives do we really have? I know I keep harping on that, but we don't have that many. We don't have a lot of alternatives here. You're kind of stuck with what you've got, and this is one of those guys where it might just make sense to say, all right, maybe I'll pay a little bit more for him. Where would you rank him among your pitchers today? He is right now, as far as ownership goes on this early slate, he is coming in with about 10% ownership, less than Trevor Richards, less than Derek Holland and less than Derek Freeland and way less than Tanner Roark, who right now is at 26% on DraftKings.
Yeah, so I like him as kind of the pivot to Darvish. So I think I will get overweight on Bassett, underweight on Darvish, as I said a couple times. I just like that he's in the same price range. I think it's a similar spot, and maybe he doesn't have as much upside as Darvish. I mean, I'm not expecting Bassett to throw 7 shutout innings with 7 Ks or anything like that, but if he can outscore Darvish, it's going to get you a little bit of a different lineup construction. You save $700 to maybe upgrade 1 or 2 of your hitters, and he's pitching in a better pitching environment as well.
Agreed. I think also that with the ownership projections will change a bit once we have Pena added to them because he's not in there yet. I mean, if Derek Holland's popping at 18%, I would expect Pena to soak up some ownership. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would think it would alter things a little bit here. What about hitters? Both Bassett and Roark, while I agree, I am not a big Tanner Roark guy either. Both of them are at least decent at limiting runs, even if they aren't great fantasy pitchers. Is this a game at O.co in a clear pitcher's park that you're targeting bats?
If Chris Davis is in the lineup, he's not in the projected lineup. I don't know if I missed something on him. I know he got scratched a couple days ago.
Yeah, he left. No, but he left yesterday's game with a hip injury too.
Okay. So he probably won't be in then. But if he somehow is, I mean, he's 4K versus Roark, so I'd be really interested in that. Matt Olson is another guy I'm going to be heavy on. And then some of these guys, even at the bottom of the line, I mean, Profar, if he's batting second, 3,400, there's one of your better value plays on the slate. But like Piscotty and Laureano and even like Grossman, if he's batting 8th, like I just have a hard time not seeing myself get to some of these guys if we're talking about playing some expensive pitchers and then also some expensive bats. You got to save somewhere. So it's likely going to be with the middle and the bottom of this Oakland order.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we got to go to hitters somewhere. I don't think we were really high on many hitters in any of these games. I mean, like obviously Cleveland's got some good spots. Rockies, if you're paying a ton for guys like Arenado, Story, maybe Desmond, and then some Chicago bats. What about top stacks here? Like we said, there are some higher totals. The Cubs are at 6. The Cleveland Indians are almost inexplicably at 5.6. Colorado at 5.3, and then Oakland at 4.7. Those are the higher ones for the slate.
Just like top stacks for the early slate.
Yeah.
I think Oakland's going to be up there as far as exposure goes for me. The top 3 are probably going to be Oakland, Chicago, and Cleveland for me. So,
okay.
Yeah,
I think so too.
Leaving Coors out on a 5-game slate for the most part, it's going to look like.
Yeah, it feels like Coors one-offs or just 2 hitters from Coors makes more sense.
Some people in the YouTube chat are saying maybe this game won't play the Coors game. So, of course,
on
that.
Are they saying for just because it's so cold?
Well, we're getting the I live in, name city.
What's that?
We're getting the insert city near Denver. It's 30 minutes away from the park type of thing. It's gonna snow or something. So.
Oh right, yeah, I saw like light snow or something. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, playing baseball in snow doesn't seem like an enjoyable time. No. So I don't know. Well, it's definitely worth monitoring because it's freezing. Well, it's literally almost freezing in the middle of May in Colorado. So you have that working for you. All right, Jake, we got 5 more games. Let's hit the main slate. Now, before we do, MLB strategy, one word, is the promo code to get 50% off, half off your first month of Awesemo subscription. And you know what? If you haven't checked us out yet, if you haven't even been on the site yet, you just came across us somewhere and you want to be able to check it out first before you purchase anything, well, head over. You can see everything we have, to get an idea, or you can do a weekly pass as well. But, we offer pretty much anything you need to play DFS and have all of these tools at your disposal from the MLB, or actually not MLB, ownership projections for every sport. We have the player projections for every sport. Uh, Great articles with a ton of time put into them from guys like Adam Share, myself, Ben Rasa, a whole lot more. Everything Jake does over there, all of his shows, all of Josh, of course, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. He has some great primers, and a lot of them are free, by the way, on the Learn DFS tab. I would highly, even if you know DFS, I would highly suggest checking them out as well. And then we had the lineup builder, and Jake, Fantasy Cruncher add-on, Fantasy Cruncher
Oh yeah.
Pro. That's pretty exciting and something that's really, really a cool feature that we've partnered with them for the Fantasy Cruncher Pro.
Oh yeah, FC Pro is my new favorite thing. The lineup study feature, like you can go in and see who Awesemo is playing, who your favorite pros are playing. You can see who we're playing. You can check on Adam's lineups, like I said a couple shows ago. He's a guy that I've been looking at more and more just to see what kind of lineup construction he's doing. How heavy is he going on his stacks? What do his player exposures look like? Do they look like mine? Am I completely different? So you want to kind of imitate what some of these top players are doing. And we've got a few of them at this site that I think you should be looking at on a nightly basis for their MLB lineups.
Yep, and that gives you the opportunity to do so. So much more: MMA, NASCAR, PGA, NHL, everything really. Everything. So MLB strategy. That's the promo code. You just click sign up on the top left of the homepage, and it will send you to select your plan. If you want the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, make sure to select that and use the promo code MLB strategy to get 50% off your first month. Hopefully we'll see you over there, and hit us up in the MLB or premium Slack chat when you do. People in there all day around the clock talking baseball and every other sport. We have all different channels for every sport. MLB strategies, the promo code. All right, Jake, Cleveland to the 5 p.m. slate, 5-game 6:30 p.m. slate, I should say. It's still early here. New York Yankees and Seattle. J.A. Happ, Mike Leake. It's kind of been a struggle for Happ this year. You know, he hasn't been horrible. He hasn't been terrible. I think from a fantasy standpoint, he's been a lot worse, and he's had a couple of ugly games. But I don't know. I can't. I'd be lying if I said that this Seattle lineup didn't scare me. Just with the amount of power they offer, they've got a lot of pop from the right side of the plate as well. And you have a 4.2 run total at Yankee Stadium for the Seattle Mariners. It's actually lower than I thought it would be. And by the way, 5.4 run total for the Yankees against Mike Leake. We'll talk pitching and then jump into the bats.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at Leak a little bit right now. I don't know where he's going to end up once I start running crunches for the main slate, but like looking at how this slate sets up, I don't know how I'm not going to go to someone like Rich Hill and Corbin and like Soroka, even though I don't love the spots for really anyone on the slate. But like Musgrove 7,300, Leak at 6K. I mean, he's not a very good pitcher, but he is capable of having these starts where he goes 6 and 7 innings and gets you a couple strikeouts, and that might be enough here. Like I don't love Wade Miley, even though I'm probably going to be ending up there as well. Like this slate is really tough for pitching, and Leak gets a bunch of righties. I know he's not really great against either side, but if he can just limit the damage, I think he might be okay. And then I would expect the Yankees bats to also be really popular against him. So it works as a little bit of a leverage play if you can stomach playing Mike Leake on a short slate. Happ, on the other side, his price is super appealing. I haven't played in a bunch of slates with Happ so far this season. And when I looked last night at some of his numbers, his swinging strike numbers, they were down quite a bit. I mean, 9.5% on the season, just over 30% chase rate, like first pitch strike rate at just 60%. So I don't know. I think there might be something going on with Happ. I'm a little bit worried about him, and then also worried about the lineup against him. He gets a bunch of righties here. E5, Domingo Santana, while he strikes out a bunch, he does have quite a bit of power. And then like Healy as well is a bit worrisome. Haniger leading off for 4,500. So I see a lot of potential landmines here for Happ. It's going to depend on ownership, of course, as everything does in MLB DFS. But I think I'm more on everything Seattle in this game than the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. It's a weird game though because this is a Yankees team that has just been battered by injuries all season long. So they're starting to get some players back, right? You're
Mhm.
still without Judge. You're still without Stanton. Um, Hicks is actually supposed to be activated this weekend, which is good news for the Yankees. Gregorius, Tulowitzki, uh, even Ursula is out again. He left yesterday's game. God. So Greg Bird remains out. So yes, you still have Sanchez, you still have Andujar who's back, you still have Gleyber Torres, but this is still a very watered down lineup compared to what it was projected to be at the start of the season.
Yeah, and looking at the ownership we have right now, uh, the Yankees bats actually aren't as chalky as I expected. Maybe that'll come up, maybe that'll come down, and I won't have to play Leak as much as a leverage play. But if some of their guys start getting above 20% ownership on a 5 game slate, some of their hitters, I think it does make sense to look at Leak, even though it is tough to swallow a bit. Uh, Looks like the Astros are kind of the chalk stack against Mike Minor. Hap at 34% right now. I don't think I'm willing to go there, even though we both agree it's a good price. If we think Hap is fine, the question is Hap fine here? And I honestly don't know the answer.
It's tough to say, and he hasn't really shown us anything that should encourage us this year. That's what I don't like. If we were to just pull up his usage and outcomes tab on Brooks Baseball. By the way, if you're not using Brooks Baseball
Mm-hmm.
to research pitchers, I would highly suggest changing that. I mean, look, Baseball Savant is arguably the best baseball research platform, site that you can use. But Brooks is very easy too. And when you want to see how someone's pitches are doing, when you want to see the movement, velocity, all quickly in one spot, sorting by game, month, or year, or inning, this is the preeminent place as far as that information can be digested and absorbed because it just makes it really easy. So, all right, Jake, I'm pulling it up now. So the four seamer, the two seamer, the slider, and the changeup is what we're seeing from Hap. Mostly four seam, sinker, and well, yeah, I guess he throws a slider 16%, a changeup 12%. Whiff rates, yeah, 10% whiff rate on the slider, down from last year.
Yeah.
Changeup is up, but he's not throwing it a lot, and he's down on the four seamer as well. So I mean, look, they're not they haven't dropped precipitously or anything, but they're still not great. He doesn't have a 30% whiff per swing rate on any of his pitches. So
Yeah,
that's kind of fascinating.
yeah. I swear he was like up in the top 25 or 30 last year as far as overall whiffs per swing. I may be wrong on that, but he's definitely getting way less whiffs this season, and we're at a sample size where you can kind of start to make some conclusions. Maybe he's just, maybe it's a run of tough matchups. I mean, they don't look that tough. Strikeout wise, they're not perfect. Boston, Angels, Minnesota, much improved. So maybe you give him a bit of a pass for some of these, but like he had 2 starts against Baltimore and he couldn't get through 5 innings
Right.
to start the season.
Right.
And then,
And
yeah,
gave up 6 through 4 innings against the White Sox
yeah.
too.
So,
Definitely some tough strikeout matchups. Even San Francisco isn't the easiest, but it's a little bit of a concerning spot here. And he's also allowed 9 home runs through his first 7 starts as well. I mean, Seattle, I don't have a huge issue looking at the Seattle Mariners stack either, to be honest with you.
yeah, I like it.
Next one here, St. Louis, Pittsburgh. Michael Wacha, Joe Musgrove. Musgrove got just rocked his last time out, and he was pretty chalky against Oakland. Now he's at Busch Stadium. You have temperatures around 64 degrees, winds blowing out, but like kind of towards first base, in between first base and the outfield, and left field, in between center and third base. Not anything really serious there, but I have tough time really getting on board with either of these guys. Waka, for fantasy purposes, hasn't really offered much. Pittsburgh doesn't strike out. Are you willing to jump on Musgrove here against St. Louis against a lot of righties?
I'm not crazy about Musgrove here, and it's more the matchup. I like Musgrove as a pitcher. He's good against righties, and he's going to get 4 or 5 of them in a row, likely, with the St. Louis lineup if they roll out their normal lineup. So, I mean, you can see reasons why you might want to play Musgrove, but the Cardinals strike out below average versus righties, much above average WRC plus 110 for the season, 175 ISO, one of the highest on base percentages against righties as well. So it's just not an easy matchup for Musgrove. And I fear that this price is going to make him popular again. What he's at right now, yeah, I mean, he's mid-teens right now in ownership percentage. I can't imagine that doesn't come up by time we get closer to lock, because people just wonder, okay, am I going to Mike Leake? Am I going to Waka on the other side? Luke Weaver against Atlanta? Like, there's just not a lot of other pitching options. So I think by default, he's going to be, a top 5 owned pitcher, and I'm not really interested against the Cardinals if that's the case.
Yeah, I'd have thought that he'd have a little bit more here too. He seems to be very popular, being that he's always cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But as a matter of fact, Jake, Michael Wacha is the one with 28% projected ownership on DraftKings right now.
Yeah, I don't think I really like that. Why? I mean, 7,600, I guess he's a favorite, right? But what do people see in Waka? Do you see the reasons why Waka would be chalky?
Honestly, the only thing I would consider is, let's see what the run total is. It's 4. It's 4. He's a 137 favorite on the money line. So
I suppose
that would be about it for me. I mean, I don't. Waka very, very rarely appeals to me. This is a guy that on the season, he has a 9% swinging strike rate. That is not very good. 23% K rate, but to me, that's probably higher than it should be. He's walking batters at a 15% clip. There's a lot of things I do not like about Michael Waka. I just don't want to take up all the time on the show. It's a bit concerning to me.
Yeah, I like Polanco, assuming he's in. Josh Bell for 4,400 also grades out really well for me. So those will be 2 guys I target against Waka with, and then Frazier if he's leading off for 3,400. So
yeah, for
I like
sure.
The bats against him. The Pirates just don't strike out versus righties, just over 20% on the season. That's bottom 5 in the MLB.
Yeah, absolutely. It does not make for a very appealing matchup. I mean, if Waka was like 6,300, I would get maybe why, but it's real. The only thing I can think of is that there's just nobody else, I guess. But I feel like I don't know. We'll get to them. We'll get
Leake,
to what's that?
Mike Leake, baby.
Yeah, your boy Mike Leake. God, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I guess you got to go somewhere, but honestly, I'd almost rather take this $800 savings on Wade Miley. We'll get there. Actually, we'll get there right now. Unless, did you want to talk about any St. Louis bats?
I think I'd more be looking at them as a stack than trying to target against Musgrove.
Yeah.
Outside of Carpenter, yeah.
Yeah, he's still pretty cheap, which I have no problem with leading off. Texas and Houston, though, you have Wade Miley on the mound and Mike Minor. It's funny that you mentioned that Houston right now was pretty chalky. It's interesting because this is a guy in Mike Minor who has been downright spectacular. Like, dude, Minor's been so good recently. It's great. Look at some of these starts: 7 scoreless, 7 Ks, 7 innings. This is in Arizona: 2 runs, 5 Ks, 9 scoreless, 7 Ks. So complete game shutout. Then he had a kind of rough game against Oakland: 6 innings, 4 runs, 4 Ks. Then 7 1-run innings, 13 Ks against Seattle. And he capped it off last week with 8 scoreless innings, 9 strikeouts against Toronto. Mike Minor's been ridiculous this season, Jake. Ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, why would I get it. It's a lefty, and Houston's got the highest implied total on the slate, but I think people are just going to Houston because maybe they'll have money to spend. And Houston looks underpriced against Minor, but like you said, Minor's just been so good. What about what he's done this season or even last season makes you want to target against him if the bats are going to be chalk? So while I don't think you need to play Minor at 9,400, I think avoiding or going underweight on Houston bats is how I'm going to approach this. Sure, could they get to him? Yeah, but I just don't think they deserve to be the highest owned team on the slate. I don't think that at all, actually.
Look, I agree with you. I mean, I guess some people are just not buying into Minor, and that's fine. I mean, I don't think he's as good as he's been, but he has been impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And you can only scream that it's an illusion or a fluke for so long until you say, okay, maybe it isn't. Yeah, his changeup, he's throwing his changeup a ton, and not only is he missing bats with it, but he's not allowing any power. He's not allowing any hits on the pitch. He's getting not a lot of ground balls, but it doesn't really matter because he's forcing such soft contact. Like, I mean, looking at all of these offerings that he has, it's not just one out pitch, Jake. It's not just one off-speed pitch. He actually has he's throwing a lot of good stuff, and almost all of it's been pretty successful. I'm just hard pressed to bet against Mike Minor with the way he's been pitching right now. Can he get blown up? Of course he can. It's baseball. It's a volatile sport. Houston's very good as well, but being like chalk on a 5-gamer, it feels like this would be a spot to, as we said earlier, try and get that leverage.
Yep. Yeah, Houston's fine individually. I think they're okay. Like if you want to take a Bregman or Altuve or Springer or Correa, they've just got so many good hitters where it makes sense. Maybe they can wear down Minor, but I don't know. I just don't think Minor's as likely to fail as what these Houston bat ownerships are showing me.
Right, and to be fair, it doesn't mean that I have much interest in Minor.
Agreed.
The Astros still strike out at a really, really low clip, and Minor's not cheap. If Minor was priced down a lot for the matchup, I would consider it, but that's tough to do.
Agreed.
Wade Miley, so you get two lefties on the mound. He has a better matchup. Rangers striking out at the sixth highest rate against lefties last season they did. If you were to look at this season, where are they at this season? If you have it, feel free to scream it out.
Rangers versus lefties, they are
fifth.
27.8%. Yep.
Yeah, fifth highest K rate. The funny thing though, Jake, is they don't have much power from the right side of the plate.
Yeah.
Like Hunter Pence, Elvis Andrus, these are your righties. Asdrubal Cabrera is way better from the left side, and he's been way better at home this year. I mean, it's crazy. He has 7 home runs, 17 hits, 22 RBIs at home, 0 home runs, 0 doubles, 5 hits, and 2 fantasy points per game on the road this year. So just crazy difference there. He's really acclimated to Arlington and struggled everywhere else. But okay, so do you like Miley or do you like the Rangers bats or nothing?
I don't really like much of anything. You can always make a case for Gal, but he's 5,400. I believe, didn't Wade Miley have reverse splits for a few years? Or didn't people think that maybe he was worse against lefties?
Did you see the stat on Gallo?
No. Which one?
That Gallo is the first player to ever hit 100 home runs before he hit 100 singles.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean,
crazy though, man. Like you hit 100 home runs before you singled 100 times. That's just crazy. I don't know. I can pull up the Miley splits for you. I'll just go career. So he's been better against lefties from a weighted on base standpoint. Home runs per 9, better against lefties. Yeah. Strikeout rates pretty much even across the board. He doesn't get a lot of Ks. We know that. He's done a good job of run prevention, though, if we're being honest.
Right, and he's going to be a guy that I'm sure I'm going to get to some of and I'm fine with that on this slate. If he's going to be lower owned than both Waka and Musgrove, I'll sign up for some Wade Miley and hope those two guys struggle, because I think Miley's a fine pitcher. I mean, he's an okay pitcher, and the Rangers do help you out in the strikeout department from time to time. So he could rack up a few strikeouts here. I'm not crazy about the Rangers bats, so I am going to get to a decent amount of Wade Miley, it's looking like.
I don't think it's crazy either. I mean, I mentioned it a little while ago. I think you can do worse. It's not to say I love this guy. No, I don't think I've rostered him yet this season, but it wouldn't shock me to see that this be an underwhelming game for the Rangers. Plus, they only have a 4-run implied total. It's the third lowest on this entire slate. So, yeah. I don't have an issue with it whatsoever. On the other side, for hitters, I don't want to pay 54 for a lefty-lefty matchup for Gallo. He can hit lefties, but it's Elvis Andrus is very expensive. It's kind of a tough spot to get to for anyone in Texas. I want to move on. We got 2 games, but before we do, Jake, let me just ask you: are there any individual Houston bats that you like Chirinos at a bag catcher position at 3,500, or anybody stand out to you here that you want to touch on before we move on?
The guy I have highest is, I believe it's Bregman. Yeah, Bregman.
Okay. Chirinos on Yahoo is way too expensive, so I don't want to pay that for him. But Altuve is a guy who has been underpriced for a while now. He's 17 on Yahoo, 43 on DraftKings. He's the same price as basically Colton Wong. So I'll keep playing Altuve until his price reflects his true talent level. So
sure.
All right, Mike Soroka, Luke Weaver. Jake, we've got a total of 4.3 for Atlanta, and on the other side for Arizona, also 4.3. Break this pitching matchup down for us.
Yeah, Soroka, I think, is the guy I'm more looking at, just above average swinging strike rate, or I'm sorry, right at average. I think maybe a little bit over 11% for the season. Above average chase rate, almost 34%. He is getting a good amount of first pitch strikes, 66% right now for Soroka. I don't know. I think he's pretty talented. I completely whiffed on him against the Padres. I didn't really even consider him for some reason. So he's had all 4 of his starts have actually been really solid. 5 innings, 6 Ks, 5 2/3, 7 Ks, 6 innings, 8 Ks, 7 innings, 6 Ks with 1 or 0 earned runs in all of those. So it's hard to argue with the results. The advanced numbers, like the stuff under the hood, checks out. And the Diamondbacks, I think there are quite a few strikeouts in this matchup for him. While I don't think Soroka's going to be a huge strikeout guy, he's just at a price, and it's probably a little bit of an overprice, but he's just going to be the guy that I get to, I think, in this range, or one of the guys that I get to.
I understand it for sure. Look, Soroka's pretty good, man. He's a solid pitcher, and I think on a slate like this, I wouldn't be afraid to get there, especially given that among 10 pitchers on this main slate, he has the 4th lowest projected ownership. So, I mean, if he's going to be lesser owned than an 8K Luke Weaver, I'm perfectly okay getting to some Soroka. Now, does that mean I love him? No, I don't love him. But I certainly don't love Luke Weaver against and look, Weaver's been really good, and I was shocked when he went out and struck out 9 Braves a few weeks ago. Are you buying into it?
I didn't want to, but he is outdoing his season averages from last year at this point. I know he had a higher chase rate. I know he had a higher swinging strike rate so far for the season. I don't know if that's going to keep up. This is Luke Weaver after all. I mean, everybody's wanted this guy to be good for, it seems like 10 years, since I started playing DFS.
I know, it's so crazy, yeah.
And he'll have one of these games and people will jump right on him and they'll say he's throwing this pitch differently. But he is getting quite a few more swinging strikes. He is getting more chases, and that's kind of always been my issue with him. Is that while everybody like he's always owned, it always seems like he's underpriced. He was a big Vegas favorite all the time. He just wasn't getting the swings and misses, and now he is doing a better job of that. That being said, for this slate, why would you want to target against the Braves in any significant capacity here? I don't really want to target against the Braves. There's not a lot of strikeouts there. I know he just had a good start against them. Or no, that was against who did he have? It was against Colorado.
Yeah, in Colorado.
But he also did have the 9 strikeouts against the Braves.
A couple weeks.
Don't see how
and 7 Ks against a Pittsburgh team that doesn't strike out. Like, he's striking out teams that don't strike out, and he's getting it. It's really bizarre, actually.
Yeah, so I don't buy into it enough to play him at chalky ownership against the Braves on a 5-game slate. I don't think you need.
Yeah,
to do that.
look, I don't disagree. So here's something that did. I'll be honest, it shocked me a little bit. Per game swinging strike rates since that Padres start. So against the Padres, I think he also had like 8. Yeah, so he had 8 against the Padres, 9 against Atlanta, 7 against Pittsburgh, 5 against Chicago, and 8 against Colorado. Swinging strike rates starting with San Diego, 11%, 16%, 9.5, 11.5, 14.5. So, you have 4 of 5 starts there with double-digit swinging strike rates. 2 of them almost or above 14. I don't like him in this start very much against Atlanta, even though he was good against them last time. But he's definitely a guy I think we should be paying very close attention to see if this continues.
Yeah, if he can do it here, I mean, maybe it'll be too late and maybe everyone will be on him. But he's a guy, I've got a close eye on. I want to see how he does in this start. If he can mow down the Braves once again, I might be forced to buy in just a little bit more.
Yeah, it's tough to okay, let's put it this way. We're not fully buying into it yet, but are you buying into Atlanta hitters here against or against Weaver?
So Freddie Freeman, just kind of default. I always play Freddie Freeman.
Right.
And then Acuna is also going to be pretty chalky at 4,200. So no off the wall plays that I'm looking at against Weaver. I'll say that.
Okay. We've got 1 game to go here. Do you have any Arizona bats against Soroka that you want to discuss? We are in Chase Field today, and I don't know if the roof's going to be open or not, but temperatures are around 90 degrees.
It looks open right now. So if that holds true, I'll take a Peralta against him. I just like Peralta against righties basically always. So 4,700 against Soroka, that would be a guy I would go to. But I'm not getting to a lot of Nick Ahmed, Carson Kelly, Kettle Marte for almost 5K, Christian Walker, righty. It's probably just going to be a couple one-offs against Soroka in the lineups that I don't play him in.
It's one of those slates where I'm not really in love with any teams for hitting purposes.
Yeah.
Like Seattle against Happ, but it's not like I'm confident in that. I just think you're going to have to go somewhere, and Happ is projected to have a lot of ownership here. So, all right, well, let's finish it out. We got one more game to go. And by the way, before we close this out, if you enjoy the show, I appreciate it. You want to see more, hit us with a thumbs up, like the video. It helps us out a lot. We appreciate it. And it helps us keep doing what we're doing. Also, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always know when new content's going to drop next. We appreciate all you guys. Dodgers, Washington, Rich Hill, Patrick Corbin. All right, 2 good pitchers, Jay, and two expected or low expected totals here. 3.2 for Washington. It is the lowest on the entire slate by a wide margin. 3.9 for the Dodgers against Patrick Corbin. Let's start with Rich Hill, who has been back activated from the DL for 2 starts now and has allowed 2 home runs in each of those starts. He is a good pitcher. He is always hurt, though, and he does have a good matchup with a low total against him. Are you paying this top tier tag for Rich Hill? He's the most expensive pitcher on DraftKings and on Yahoo. God, I think he is also one of them. Where is he at on draft on Yahoo? 43. That's not crazy,
Yeah.
especially given Corbin's price point.
This is just like such a Rich Hill spot, just like the classic Rich Hill
Yes.
chalk spot. He's
Yep.
overpriced. He has not gone over 85 pitches in either of his first two starts. And he's going up against a bunch of righties with a 3.2 implied total against him. So, Vegas wise, it makes sense to target Rich Hill here or to play Rich Hill here. Like, I just can't get over the 85 pitches. I mean, even if you give him 90, 95, like, you're paying almost 10K for a guy that
I
if
know.
things go perfectly, he's getting you through six. Um, Whereas like Corbin, I believe he threw 118 pitches in his last start. It's a worse matchup for Corbin, but he's got better strikeout stuff. He can go deeper into games. He's allowed to go over 100 pitches, whereas Rich Hill just isn't. So I think I'm more on Corbin than Hill, even at the ownerships. I'm going to end up on a bunch of Rendon and Kendrick and probably Yan Gomes and Dozier as well. So I'm going to have more Nats, more Corbin than Dodgers and Rich Hill.
Okay. Yeah, I'm.
The Dodgers are a very scary matchup. I hate targeting against the Dodgers, but I mean, I also hate targeting against the Braves. I don't like targeting against the Astros.
For
Not crazy
sure.
about targeting against Pittsburgh either. So,
And when we're looking at some of the prices, like you said, why Rich Hill, who is probably not going to exceed 85, 90 pitches, is $500 more than Patrick Corbin
yeah.
on DraftKings is pretty inexplicable. But what about on Yahoo? Where because I think it's a big difference here. If you mentioned it, forgive me, I
No,
was
no, I didn't.
looking over some stats. Corbin's 52, Rich Hill's 43. I
Yeah.
do think you can make a very good argument there for Rich Hill.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at those prices, you're saving $9 to get down to Hill. You don't need a huge performance for him to pay off that price tag. You look at the other guys in his range: Soroka, Mike Minor, both at $40, Musgrove at 41. If you're playing the all like, or I guess J Happ at $38 as well. So they're all kind of mashed together. In that case, I would just take the raw point projection of Hill over those guys and probably over Corbin point per dollar as well. So it makes sense if you're playing the Yahoo slate, the main one at 7:45 Eastern. But yeah, on DK on other sites, I don't think I'm gonna get close to the field on Rich Hill.
Yeah, me neither. And the Nats are still down a lot of players. They're still down Turner, Zimmerman, Adams, Juan Soto also hit the DL. So it will be interesting to see what lineup they roll out there today. And I did want to see, just before we wrap this up, what their active roster K rate looks like against lefties this season. Some teams haven't had huge samples, but some of them it's been enough. You're getting up around 500 plate appearances. So the Nats active roster, so not the guys that are injured, is at. Are they all the way down? No, where are they at? Oh, they must. I must.
The
Okay,
Nats,
27.2%, Jake,
yeah.
but only 202 plate appearances for the active roster.
If you, I don't have the active roster, but I do have just the entire season, a 127 WRC plus versus lefties for the Nats.
Okay. Yeah, I'd prefer active roster because you're taking out like Soto and you're
Right,
taking out Turner and Zimmerman, and
for
because
sure.
Zimmerman is very good against lefties, and uh, it for a team like this with so many injuries that actually let's see what the difference is. 27.2% K rate
132 WRC plus.
and 132 WRC plus on the non-active roster. It's at actually very, very similar, 27.0 and 127. So there are some strikeouts here.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just, do we trust Rich Hill? I'd rather go to him on Yahoo and go to Corbin on DraftKings. Jake, as we did last week on Thursday, are you looking to run a few crunches here? Usually
Yeah,
we get out of here by 11. We've got about 5-6 minutes to go.
yeah.
If you're
So,
set up, feel free to share that screen and get it
so
going.
yeah, I ran the early slate on DK here. Uh, Looks like I'm getting a lot of stuff that's near where the ownership's at. Carrasco, Darvish, my two highest owned pitchers. Now this hasn't taken into account ownership, so Darvish will get filtered out, I'm guessing, whereas Carrasco will get filtered in even more when I run over 150. Um, Freeland, Holland, the next two guys, that's not really unexpected. The stacks that came out were a little bit weird for me. I mean, Cubs, A's, second and third, but first was Cincinnati against Bassett. And then fourth was Miami against Darvish, which I'm not really, I don't hate doing like a little mini stack against Darvish. I don't know that you need to go with a bunch of five mans to get good leverage here. Looks like we just got the Cubs lineup as well. But yeah, I ran two-man stacks with basically every team just to try to get different spreads. So if there's like a combo or a pitching combo you want to see, or a stack combo, let me know and we can take a look deeper.
So let's try. Do you have the early slate or late slate? You got the late slate right now?
Slate.
Early slate. Okay. Try a pitching combination with Carrasco and Pena and see what we get there.
Ooh, I only got one. Let's see. Oh, I can't highlight two guys at once.
I mean, I figured you wouldn't have a ton of it. What's the most? What is the which pitching combo do you have the most of?
Oh, I figured out how to do. Carrasco, Pena. All right, I have one of those. It is a five-man Marlins: Alfaro, Walker, Castro, Anderson, Galloway. So not the prettiest, but I think you'll like the rest of the players we have in this roster. Arenado, Story, two-man. Mike Trout, one-off.
I tell you what, I don't hate that at all. Here's why. Darvish is going to be chalk in a wind game at Wrigley. You're getting Arenado, Story, and Trout, you said, as your three-man, I will say one-offs. And then, so yeah, of course, a five-man Marlins stack isn't pretty, but if they happen to have a good game and you wipe out all that Darvish ownership and also have Marlin bats plus three of the best hitters in the league, it's not the craziest idea. It's really not.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm probably going to get to that. I'll have some lineups that look funky like that. The five-man stack. I mean, you don't need a ton for those prices. You obviously need the one-offs to work out, but yeah, I'd rather do some like 3 and 4-man Marlin stacks rather than the full 5-man. I don't know that that's all that necessary, but you never know. It could work out. A guy with walk issues, maybe the Marlins put a few balls in play and you get a home run or two, and then all of a sudden you're getting huge leverage while also vaulting yourself to the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, and again, like if the wind does play in our favor, in the hitter's favor today, which we've seen happen many times in the past, that could change a lot.
For sure.
And you know what, Jake? It's a 162 game season. The Marlins will win you a tournament once or twice this year. I know Dan Strafford's mentioned it on the early bird. Hell, they had, I think, like a 15-run game against the Phillies earlier this year. Yeah. Even the worst teams in the world, once in a while, will have a monster output. The one thing I would have liked is, let's look this up. What type of speed does this Marlins lineup have as a team?
That's a good question, actually.
And the reason I mention this is because Darvish walks a lot of batters. Stolen bases are probably the most overlooked and undervalued aspect of DFS baseball, in my opinion, at least, where you're talking about stacks.
They've just got no speed.
What's that?
They've just got no speed.
Yeah, and that's what sucks, because not only does Darvish walk a lot of batters, but you're also talking about somebody in I don't think we have the Marlins lineup yet, but Jorge Alfaro is not good at holding runners either. So it is, a base stealing matchup that probably could have been taken advantage of for a guy that's literally walked 4 batters or more in almost every start this season, has already given up 4 stolen bases. It would have been nice if Marlins had some speed, because then you wouldn't have to worry as much about the power. You could get upside elsewhere.
Yeah, it looks like Rojas and Galloway are the only guys with stolen bases, but they're 2-1 for the season, so they're just not running at all for an already bad team. So it's not like if this was the Royals and they were going to be low ownership when you have Merrifield and Mondesi, I would be all over that. Plus they have some power. But yeah,
that would be way different.
Yeah.
And I think we'd be loading up on them against Darvish,
Mhm.
Especially because they'll run against anybody.
Yeah, exactly. They just like they're gonna get caught every once in a while. I mean, Buxton got caught stealing yesterday on a pitch out, but like you just want them to be willing to do it. And there's a handful of teams that are like that, with KC being the one that comes to mind the most.
Any other stacks you want to show here, Jake, before we head out?
I think I don't know. I got a bunch of Marlins, so they'll come down. But like Cubs, White Sox. I mean, you're pairing a chalky stack with a very not chalky stack. Darvish, Holland with a 5-man Cubs, Moncada, Charlie Tilson, and Puig one-off. So that's probably what I would like to do, something like that. Like, don't just play Cubs, Indians, 5-3s, because they're gonna be duped a bunch of times, or there's a good chance they are. Like, play one of these chalkier stacks with not chalky 2-man. Play a Moncada or Alonso against Carrasco, or like a Neil Walker, Curtis Granderson against Darvish if you're stacking the Indians type of thing. So
Eric Johnson asked if we could run a crunch on the late slate. Do you have
that loaded up?
So, yeah, he doesn't have it loaded up. But listen, we're gonna have plenty of time to do that on tonight's shows, the deeper dive, and then Jake on the live before lock. Do you do any of that on the live before lock show?
Yeah.
So you will run the okay. So
they'll get to see me basically make all my lineups and load them and everything. So
there you go. So you have that, Eric, and don't forget. The live before lock and deeper dive starting a half hour before they usually do. Lock is 6:35 p.m. Eastern time today on DraftKings and FanDuel, on the sponsor of the strategy show, Yahoo DFS. They are kicking their night slate off at 7:45 Eastern. It's a 4-game slate, so that Seattle Yankees game is 86th. And hey, if you've yet to check out Yahoo Sports, I'm throwing the link into the YouTube chat right now. You sign up through us. You can get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points, which you can use as currency, just like any other money on the site, to play daily fantasy sports on Yahoo. I just posted it in there in our Slack chat. It's under the yahoo.com/daily fantasy link. Hope to see you over there. And anything else, Jake, before we head out?
Good luck today, guys. Dual slates, baseball all day. Pretty fun time.
That's right. All right. And still some basketball today. I think Eddie will probably be doing
7 Eastern, I believe.
7 Eastern stream as well. So deeper dive going to be coming on earlier today, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. Jake and Chris, you and Chris today, right?
Me and Chris, yep.
Following it up at 5:30. They're going to take you up until 6:35 lock. We'll see you back here tomorrow to close out the week on on the strategy show. And by the way, MLB strategy. Don't forget, you want 50% off your first month at awesemo.com. MLB strategy. All one word, not 2 words. We'll see you back here tomorrow.